All right, hello, and this is our final session on the research paper. I'm going to go over some of the basics of the formatting and look at some of the most common errors that people make on formatting in their papers. By now, this is being recorded right after we finish summer break, so we only have a couple days, and we should have written the paper for the most part, and now should be just in that finalizing stage where basically we're going through and editing it and making sure all these formatting things are put in correctly. As again, half the grade on the paper is really coming from format, so it is really important. This is Chicago Manual. This is the source that is in your folder that's in the references section that links to the Purdue OWL. And we are going to take a look at a few things. We don't have to go over much about the formatting of the paper. I think we did that already. So I'm going to focus on formatting of the footnotes in this, and then we'll look at both when we go over and take a look at the formatting errors that people commonly make. All right. All right. Basically, just the key things to remember are to get all the information in that you are looking at. So if we look here, we got several sources. Just remember that journals are periodicals. If you use them, you want to go there. And if you did books, that's great, but just make sure that you get the relevant information in. Again, I think we looked at that earlier as well. This doesn't show the indentation that you need like it should, and it's because of the way because it's on a web page format here. A note is indented on the first line, just like a paragraph. And a bibliography is indented on all the other lines. The first line is the only one that's on the margin, and everything else is indented. So if that one's only 2 lines, so communication would be kicked over 5 points. But if this one was 7 lines long, the first line would be on the margin, and lines 1 through 7, I'm sorry, 2 through 7, would all be pushed over 5 spaces on the left, right? The sample paper is what I really encourage you to look at for that, and I'm going to switch over there for you. That sample paper, to me, you can see those details a lot better. And there we go. Again, went over this as well, but just make sure that you get all those things in. So the page number, again, don't confuse yourself with MLA. There is no name up there. You do not want to accumulate 7 errors because you turn in 7 pages and you've got your name next to the page number every time. And it's, again, it's in the very first document we read on the research paper, those basic guidelines that we read in week 1. Don't do MLA, don't do APA, do Chicago. That's what the requirement is. If you do one of those other 2, it's, there's some similarities, so you might be able to get away with some stuff. That's not one of them. If you put your name up there, that pretty much means the highest you can score on formatting of the paper is in the C range, because those repeated errors automatically knock you down to that. And then if you've got other things in there, like you have some problems with your line spacing, then you're going down from there. So you do not want to go in and get F's because of just one thing that you keep doing over and over, and it happens to be because you're going off and doing your thing, which is, I don't know, I just like MLA better, so I'm going to do it. Well, that cost you all those points. All right, now, when we look at the notes, this shows you the proper spacing, indentation, and all that. So just remember, indent the first line of a note, just a note. And don't confuse notes with bibliography. The notes are the ones, as you can see at the end, you got a comma and a page number. Tells me where you got that fact from in that source, right? So you tell me the source and where in the source you got a piece of information, right? The bibliography just lists all your sources, so I can have a quick, ready reference and look them all up. So if you look at this, number 1, you'll see, again, indent the first line, right? single space the text of the note. You can see both of these are 2 lines long each. So there's no spacing in between the lines on those, but double space between the notes. These are very common errors, and each one of them is separate. So if you start at the left margin on 15 notes, that's 15 errors. That again is kind of like something I put in there to save you, because that would put you in the F range automatically. So if you just repeat that one error, the same error over and over, it drops you to the C range. That's basically to save you from going down to the F range if something like that happens. But then if you double space those notes, you're in the F range already. Again, anyway, because now you've got 2 errors that repeat over and over. And if you are single spacing them, but you don't double space between them, same thing. That's probably putting you down there in the F range because you're repeating those multiple errors over and over again. All right, so make sure you don't do that. Get those really, really just like these are here. The one exception is, as I mentioned, that one period that's regular size has a tendency, if you hit return, to format your thing like a bullet, which throws all that spacing off. So if you want to, you can use the superscript numbers, the little numbers at the top left with no period, and just go right into your text, and that's fine. I think that would actually benefit y'all. Might seem like it's harder to do, but it's actually, I think, easier and saves you from a lot of risk of lowering your score just because you don't happen to be looking when you hit return, and now all of a sudden your margins are all messed up. All right. Use those short form citations. Again, if you copy and paste, you basically take the whole citation, copy and paste it in. If you've got no errors, it comes out right. But there's 2 problems with that. Number one, you're not just supposed to benefit from using short form citations. After you do the first one, you are required to do short form citations. So don't repeat David Harmey, comma, the condition of blah, 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 Malden, Massachusetts, etc. Every time after that, if you use that again, that's also deductions, because it should just be Harvey, comma, page number, period. All right. Make sure on those short forms that, again, the first line is indented. If there's only one line, which a short form is only going to be one line, it has to be indented then, because by definition, it is the first line. It is the first and only line. So indent it, please. I do have every semester some students who indent those full citations, and then they do the short forms, and those are on the margin. They just don't think of indenting it, probably because it's so short, but it is the first line. If it's the only line, it has to be the first line. All right. Also, notice that you've got the double spacing in there. Make sure you get that. The line that's at the top, if you don't have that, I'm not going to be really strict on enforcing that. But if you can put it in there, so much better. It does create some separation between your notes and your text, so that's a good thing. The bibliography, the spacing is the same. You want to single space it and then double space between those bibliographic citations. And here you can see the indentation. The first line's on the margin, second and third line, those are the ones that are indented. So again, just make sure you pay attention to all those little details, first name, last name in a note. Here you can see last name, comma, first name. And of course, that's because your list is in alphabetical order, so you don't want to start off with this guy Latour, and then the next citation in the bibliography is Baldwin, because that would obviously be out of alphabetical order, right? That basically just kind of recaps some of that. We're going to skip over, take a look at some papers, and we will hopefully be able to avoid some of the common mistakes that we make, that I see made. Let's see. You should see one coming up. There we go. This is kind of in the middle of it, so let me scroll up to the top. All right. Here we go with the page. Technically, I don't really ding much on the cover page as long as it looks neat. You know, if you read the requirements, you should come down about a third of the page. This one starts way up at the top, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. Just make sure it's separate. So you don't want to start this on the first page of text. Make sure there is a break, right? And then you can see the page numbering. There's some problems here on this one. The header has a page number in it, and they did not put their name there. You see it starts on with 2 though. Right? The cover page should not be numbered, and so this should start on page 1. It looks like they went after that and tried to do it manually in the text itself, which is not a good idea, because if you start editing, hit returns, then what looks like it's on your top right corner ends up pushed down. You might have a line at the start and then the number and then another line. All that is going to be problematic. So try to get it in the header. The easiest way to do this is when you go into the header, just set the first page as page 0 and set it to not show, and then page 1 will show over here. All right. I'm going to scroll down. You see the notes. At first glance, they look like they're right, but they're not. This is what I meant when I said when you hit that return carriage, it puts it into a bullet form for you, and that's what we have here. You see there's a big gap between the 1 period, 2 period, 3 period, and then the name. All right, that is because it was formatted like a bullet. And again, that's why I use the superscript. I don't even mess with the 1 period. I just put the superscript in there. The budge is about where it should be. But the 1 should be over there with it. This one you can see is last name, comma, first name. So what this person did was just the exact same thing that you would do in a bibliography. That should be Kent G. Budge, not Budge, comma, Kent G. You see that there's not much information there. There's no title. There's no way that I can tell. This looks like a casualty list, so it might be a primary source, but I cannot tell that. There's no date, no access date, so this note was completely done using something that was not Chicago Manual. And then you can see also there's no double spacing between the citations. 2 and 3 are, 3 and 2 long, 3 lines long. They're supposed to be single spaced like they are, but there is not the double spacing that there is supposed to be between the citations. You would need to come at the end of each one. And there you can see where that 2 came up. That also tells you bullet form citations right there. This is actually too much because, again, this is something that's very common in both the footnotes and the text. If I go up here, I see paragraph, and there's a little box at the bottom right. When I click on that, I get this menu. I think that'll show up for y'all. It does. Okay. So what I want to do is make sure that down here at the bottom where it says spacing, it's the last thing with menu items in it, right above the preview. Before it says 0.0 PT. That's good. Right? Line spacing is blank. That means it's got more, whatever I highlighted is more than 1. So I just want to make that single. Right? This is the one that causes the problem. It says after 8 point. What that means is I'm hitting a single space and then it's adding 8 points to that. So it is no longer single spaced. I'm going to set that to 0 and that brings it up. So when I hit the return carriage twice or the enter button twice, now it's double spaced between them, right? Like it should be. And that's also going to be a big problem in the text. That is going to be something that you want to pay attention to in the formatting for the notes, bibliography, and also for the formatting of the paper as well. All right. Now, when I scroll down and continue on, you can see that kind of continues all the way. This person, as you can kind of probably guess, probably didn't put as much into their paper. You see most of their sources are not the kinds that were supposed to be used, or at least it doesn't look like it. When I come down to my bibliography, there's not even the right formatting there. This one looks like it's formatted like a note. It's reversed. So this is indented on the first line, and it's the opposite of the way it should be. It is alphabetical order. this is where you should have that last name, comma, first name, right? There's an easy fix to this, though. If you've done this, notice I can just highlight every single one of these. And I'm going to go back up to paragraph and hit that little button in the bottom right. So I bring up that menu again, and I can see this person set it as first line. You can see where it says in the middle one, indentation, left, right, and then special. Special is at first line. I'm going to change that to indent. I'm going to change my thing to 0 there. I'm a single space. And now it looks like it's supposed to. So it's, fix the whole bibliography. I'm talking while I'm doing that. That should be about a 5-second fix, especially if you actually highlight it all. Again, I missed a few sources down here apparently. By the way, you can also type that in if you want to. Works the same way. And that's done. All right. Now, most people don't have problems with the margins. The margins are typically going to be 1 inch. It's kind of default to that. You can see that much of it's good. There are some other things in here to be careful of. For example, where they use, for example, is the beginning of a paragraph and it's not indented. So just make sure you indent those paragraphs like that every time. This person has a mix of transitions in paragraphs. So I'm going to pull one up that is a little bit more consistent. Right. And we are going to go to sample 2. All right. And pardon me, I'm just going to check over, make sure, okay, you are indeed able to see that. All right, this one, you can see the black bar in the middle, that is where I blacked out the name. So anywhere you see that, you know that there is a name, and that's going to be true for these other papers as well. Cover page looks fine. This one got the page numbering in the right place. They don't have the name, but again, they started on page 2, so that is going to be one of those repeating errors because this is page 1, and that's problematic. So if we look down here, though, we can see their footnotes much better. But again, this person also did last name, comma, first name. So first, use a note form, use a note citation. That's why we got that thing in there in the references for you to use. N means note, B means bibliography. That's why they give you 2 samples for everything, book, journal, whatever. Notes are what you want to use when you're doing a note. All right. B, bibliography, is what you want to use when you're doing the bibliography. So don't confuse those. Now, she did her short form citations good. And for the most part, that's really the only error, but that's a costly one. That means this person's footnotes look really, really good. All right, when you just glance at them, I go in there and I see that error, and she's going to have, oh man, let's see, 32 notes. A lot of these are short form, but she's going to have probably 10 sources in there where she's having to do them, for the first time. So that's going to be 10 errors off the top. So with all that work she put into this, she's maximum going to be getting a C on the format of the citations category, right? Same thing, she's off 1 digit on the page. This is saying it's page 6 and it's page 5. And every other page is like that. So she's getting a maximum of a C on all of those formatting of the paper categories, right? And that's before I've looked at, again, anything else. So just be careful of those. The bibliography, when I come down here, looks much better. And again, it looks like it's organized the way it's supposed to. The line spacing is proper. The indentations are proper. Looks like at first glance, again, everything as far as the information in it is good. It should look this way. It should look nice and neat. Again, I don't like MLA because it all runs together. It double spaces, so it creates gaps in between, but but since you just double space, but if it's like 4 lines, like Martin Luther King's nonviolence and racial justice is, but then you just double space between that one and the one before and the one after too. You can't just glance at it and see that's a separate source. So single space and then put those gaps in there so we can makes it nice and neat and makes all those sources jump out. All right. That one is very good. Again, bibliography starts just at the top. Don't bold it, don't underline it, nothing like that. Just a capital B, make it centered, and hit return. Make sure you take the centering off when you start your bibliography. I've had people turn in their entire papers centered. So don't do that, but very, very good. She had a lot of notes in there. And again, that kind of, again, like I say, that kind of hurts her because she does the last name, comma, first name. That puts her in the C range. But one good thing about it is I don't think she had other errors on top of that. So you're going to see that that's okay. No. Now, with that one, I'm going to skip over. Got another one coming up. And I think it just popped up for you. This person did apparently some MLA styling. So I'm going to go back up to the top and see what we got. The cover page, again, it looks okay. It does help if you spell your instructor's name correctly, although I don't think I took off a point for that or anything. That black bar, it's actually gray here in the header, again, is covering the name. So this is a person who maximized their formatting of the paper. I looked here, and this is taking me this is about how fast it goes. Looks okay. Well, I see that right there. C range automatically. Took me like half a second to put her in the C range for her maximum grade or his maximum grade. MLA style. All right, there is no name next to that footnote, next to that page number in Chicago Manual. So don't put it there. Don't do MLA. All right. It should not be on the first page. So that's actually a separate error. That's not just one putting the number with the name by it, the type mistake. That's also another separate error because page number does not go on the first page, the cover page. This is the first page, and that should be numbered 1. So that's also off as well. All right. When I scroll down here, I'm looking and I'm not seeing any citations whatsoever. So I'm seeing some factual information in there. I'm seeing stuff with dates. I'm seeing no actual citation though. So this one was probably an F paper. That basically meant, that number one, you can't get any formatting. You get a 0 for formatting of the citations if they're not there, right? Logically, they can't be formatted right if they don't exist. But also you'd have some issues. Technically, this if I was pushing this and not looking, this would be plagiarism, plain and simple. I don't report that in this context because this is, I think, more of an academic issue that they did not cite like they're supposed to. Down here, I can see my sources are centered. They're all web pages. So again, based on this, I'm seeing like a 0 on their sources. 0 already for formatting the citations because of the footnotes, but if not, you'd still have the same problem here because none of this is a proper bibliography. Sources should not be used at the top. That's not even correct. Sources might be MLA, I don't know, but we use bibliography at the top of a Chicago Manual bibliography, right? This one I think was the one that I brought up as what should be the obvious F paper. So obviously you want to stay away from that. Another thing is, I didn't mention, you see it was only like about 3 pages long, 2 pages of text roughly. Basically that's also formatting of the paper. So basically if you don't get that 5-page minimum, that's where that grade is impacted. Okay, now this one. So it looks like it's popping up for you. This one is actually the best of these. this was a rough draft. You can see I made several comments in this, and I'm not 100% sure. This might have been where I saved their draft and I had these comments in here. I have had people who sent me rough drafts, and I put these comments in here and they just turn around and submit it. So this might have been their final copy submitted without making any of those changes. Now note, if I make suggestions and you don't fix them, it's an error. I mean, I'm not grading my notes, I'm grading your work. So if you don't go back and fix it and take my notes out, then that is, a deduction. Now, this person, I would guess, put a return at the end or hit enter to try to get that text to go onto the first page. And that's why I say, don't do that. Put a page break in as soon as you get to, 2018 there. Put a page break at the end of that line, or maybe if you hit enter, put it right after that. But if you try to hit the enter button and set that up, there is a good chance that when it comes through on my end, or if you make changes to it before you submit it, that it comes out wrong. This is one of those times where this shows up on the cover page when it should be the start of page 1. All right. Now, I've got some other problems here. You see that this is, I'm hoping there was the draft because I see several things where there's footnotes, but you see that there's just like some random letters in there. I would think this was as a placeholder. I'm not sure what this person was doing because they did also have citations in the paper itself. So right here where you see I had this comment, for example, they had a sentence, it was a factual sentence. Now this one would not be plagiarism because they did give credit to the source they got this from, but this gets you into basically the 0 range for your citations because this is not a Chicago Manual citation. This is not a footnote or endnote, and we're supposed to be using endnotes. And again, first week of class, read your guidelines. It says we don't use parentheticals, we use notes. So this would be something, if they did this through the paper, 0 on formatting of the citations right off the top because they didn't do it, right? And again, that's one of my bigger concerns every semester. There's a couple people who are like, oh, just going off and doing APA, MLA, which do use parentheticals, and that basically cost them a lot of points right off the top, all right? Now, this person did some good formatting work here with the block quotes and all that, but again, you see the same citation issues, right? Now you can see they're getting a third block quote in there. They're getting to the point where they have too many block quotes. They're formatted nicely, but now they're going to be losing points off of formatting of the text because they just simply should not have that much made up of quotations, right? It looks like somebody putting in big quotations try to use up space so they can get to the 5 pages, right? All right, when I come down and to the end, I do not see a bibliography. So that is the big problem there. Again, that also would get you down in that F range if you just don't have a bibliography. You have to have notes. You have to have a bibliography. You have both. You don't have one or the other. You have both. They do not serve the same function, and that is why you need them, both. All right. Now, this one has the most common error that we see in formatting the paper too. This is one that I see most people don't even think about it, and it costs people off the top, basically maximizes them at the C range. And I notice it by the time I get done reading the first paragraph. If you look at the line spacing there, if you look at the movement, and then you look at changes on the next line instead, and you look at that gap closely, and then you come down to the end of that paragraph where it starts to race relations, and then you look at the gap between that paragraph and the next one that starts on June 7th, you should notice that that gap is bigger between the paragraphs than it is in the paragraphs. That's because this stuff is double spaced. Yeah, I'm sorry, you can't see my highlighting. This stuff is double spaced. When I move from here to here, this is the same thing I said when I was looking at the paragraph function for your notes. That is more because it added the 0.8. If I open that paragraph menu again, you will see that it's actually before 0, line spacing double, after it says blank. And again, when it has the blank in there, that means that there's more than one type of line spacing in what I've got highlighted. Just change it down to 0. And if you watch, put your eyes right there on the gap between those paragraphs. When I hit this button, you'll see how the bottom paragraph came up. Now it's double spaced. The Chicago requirement is that the paper is double spaced, and if you put extra spaces between paragraphs, that is not double spacing. So that is, again, you figure out you're going to have 2 paragraphs for each page, 10 paragraphs. That's automatically putting you down the C range if you make that error, so please don't. Now, if you've already finished your writing, this is actually a pretty easy one to fix. You can, again, just take, I know you can't see me highlighting it, but I'm scrolling down and highlighting every paragraph in the actual text. I'm not going to catch my bibliography if I had one, right? And if you did your footnotes using the footnote function, they will not be included, right? And what I'm going to do is do that same thing. Line spacing, I'm going to change to double. Line spacing, actually, you know what? I could actually change that one and that one to 0. Right. Hit return. Now he had a lot of block quotes in there. So if that's the case, I do have to go back and fix those block quotes. Right. They should be easy to find because you still indented them. So they're not as nice and neat as they were. But I can go back and change those to single space. Now I'm looking at it and I'm seeing I need an extra return there, so it's double space between them, but that's all there is to it. Right. If you don't have any block quotes, then you don't even have to go back and look at that. Right. In a paper you're short, you should not really try to get any. You should try not to have any block quotes in it, because that's no more than 10% of your paper should be made up of someone else's work. And that includes even if it's quotations. So you shouldn't try to, as much as possible, put things in your own words to paraphrase people rather than do quotations. But that is the #1 error that people make. They do not get the spacing right. And it's default. If you just start typing in Microsoft Word, that is the default setting. So it will happen every time you hit the enter button. And you'll be making an error. Most people don't even go back and look at it. So that's the #1. If believe me, if I got everybody in the class to just fix that, I would see less than half of the people going down to C's as I normally do. They would almost all be up in A range, because again, margins, the line spacing within the paragraphs, all that stuff is usually correct. The next biggest issue is that page numbering, but if you fix those, you should be good to go. All right, so that will hopefully help you. Again, this is where you want to be, hopefully, in that last phase where you're editing, where you can use these resources and put a little time into getting that stuff done. If you're still typing your paper up at, 5 minutes before midnight, then you're probably going to miss some of these, and you're probably going to get some of those formatting errors in there. So again, this is one where you want to, stay ahead so that you can get this part done as well. It's actually easier than the content, but it's just as important. And even though it's easier than the content, most people get the content grades in the rubric good. I mean, they do very well on those, and it's the formatting that they fall down on, even though this is the easier stuff. So put that little bit of time in there and watch your grade just go way up. All right, that is it for this one. That should be our last one. And with that, you can hopefully finish this research paper out, get it submitted in the next couple days, and move on, start preparing for the final, and then we can wrap the class up. All right. Good luck with that, and I look forward to reading y'all's work.